The scent of coffee usually pulls me from sleep before my alarm even has a chance. It's one of Clara's rituals, grinding the beans fresh each morning. I stretch, my arm reaching across the cool expanse of sheets where she's already risen. Sunlight, hazy through the linen curtains, paint stripes on the duvet. Our bedroom, a sanctuary. Bookshelves overflowing, photos on the dresser, us on that windy cliff in Big Sur, laughing, younger versions at a local carnival, sticky with cotton candy and naive joy. These are the artifacts of a life I believed was solid, built on shared laughter and quiet understanding. Downstairs, Clara hums, a soft melody weaving through the clinking of mugs. She turns as I enter the kitchen, her smile easy, familiar. It's a smile I've cataloged in all its variations. The bright, open one she gives me now, the thoughtful, pursed lip smile when she's working through a complex brushstroke on one of her canvases, the mischievous, crinkled eye smile when she's about to tease me. This morning, it's the good morning, my love smile, and it settles something warm in my chest. Morning, sleepyhead, she says, handing me a mug. Steam rises, carrying that rich, dark aroma. Thought you were going to hibernate all day. Tempting, I reply, my voice still a bit rough with sleep. I lean in, kiss her temple, then her lips. It's a soft, practiced kiss, the kind that speaks of years of comfort and affection. But the smell of your coffee is an irresistible lure. And you, of course. She leans into me, a small, contented sigh. How did you sleep? Any more wrestling with that quarterly report in your dreams? I take a sip of coffee. Perfect as always. No, mercifully. I think I finally slayed that dragon yesterday. Sent it off to Peterson. Should be smooth sailing for a bit. You slept like a log, she says, gazing out the kitchen window. Her profile is lovely, framed by the morning light. Dreamed I was flying. Over the ocean. It was peaceful. A wistful note in her voice. Sounds nice. Maybe we should plan another trip soon. Beach somewhere? Remember that little place in Carmel? Her smile returns, brighter this time. The one with the creaky porch swing and the amazing clam chowder? I'd like that. We could. Maybe after the Henderson project wraps up for you. Deal. I watch her, my wife. 5 years. It feels like a lifetime and no time at all. We've built this life, brick by brick. This house, our careers, our quiet routines. She's an artist. Her canvas is a whirlwind of color and emotion that I don't always understand but deeply admire. Her studio, the converted sunroom, is her sacred space, often smelling of turpentine and inspiration. So, what's on your agenda today? I ask. Meeting with that gallery owner, right? How's the new series coming? It's coming, she says, a familiar artist's sigh. Some days it flows, others it's like pulling teeth. Mrs. Albright wants to see 3 new pieces by next Friday. Ambitious. But I think I can manage. She mentioned a potential buyer from out of state, someone who collects emerging artists. That's fantastic, Clara. See? All that angst and paint-splattered frustration pays off. She playfully swats my arm. Easy for you to say, Mr. Spreadsheet. You don't have to coax inspiration out of thin air. No, just out of recalcitrant numbers. Different kind of beast. We share a look, one of those comfortable, understanding glances that couples develop. The kitchen is our morning hub, filled with the mundane yet comforting sounds of a shared life. The hum of the fridge, the distant chirp of sparrows in the garden, the gentle thud of the newspaper hitting the porch. Anything I can do before I head out? I offer. Pick up groceries later? Dry cleaning. I think I'm good, she says. Maybe just be your wonderful self. That's usually enough. High praise indeed. I grin. I'll try to live up to it. Then, a thought, casual, unburdened. You going to be okay if Mike swings by later? He said he wanted to borrow that power drill. Something about a shelf that's taunting him. Her smile tightens, just for a fraction of a second. A flicker in her eyes, quickly masked. I notice it, but dismiss it as what? Annoyance at Mike's sometimes chaotic energy? A desire for uninterrupted studio time? It's so fleeting, I don't give it a second thought. Oh, Mike, right? She says, her voice a little too bright. Sure, that's fine. I'll probably be in the studio most of the day. Just tell him not to break it. Or himself. I chuckle. No promises on the latter. You know Mike. All enthusiasm, occasionally questionable execution. But he's got a good heart. My younger brother. A whirlwind, a charmer, sometimes a source of minor frustration, but always, unequivocally, my brother. I've always felt a protective instinct towards him, the steady older sibling to his more impulsive nature. Clara nods, turning to rinse her mug in the sink, her back to me. He does. He's your brother. Of course, he does. There's a flatness to her tone that I register, but again, I file it away. Perhaps she's just preoccupied with her upcoming gallery deadline. I finish my coffee, walk over to her. I wrap my arms around her waist from behind, resting my chin on her shoulder. Her body feels a little stiff, not quite leaning back into me as she usually does. Love you, I murmur into her hair. Love you too, John, she replies, her voice soft, perhaps a little distant. Have a good day at work. You too. Conquer those canvases. I kiss her cheek, grab my briefcase. As I head out, I see her still standing at the sink, staring out the window. The second mug of coffee, the one she poured for herself, sits untouched on the counter, a small, unnoticed detail in the landscape of our morning. The drive to work is routine. The city unfolds, familiar buildings, familiar traffic patterns. My mind is on the Henderson project, the quarterly reports, the mundane mechanics of my job as an analyst. But underneath it all, there's a bedrock of contentment. My life with Clara. Our home. It's a good life, I think. A stable life. I glance at the framed photo of us on my desk, the mountaintop one. Her hair wild in the wind, her smile radiant. My smile, equally wide, reflecting hers. We looked invincible then. Happy. My phone buzzes. A text from Mike. Asterisk. Yo, bro. Still good to grab that drill later? Around 3? Clara cool with it? Asterisk. I smile, typing back. Asterisk. Yeah, man. She said fine. Just try not to drill your own foot. Asterisk. He's a good kid, Mike. A bit lost sometimes, bouncing between jobs, still figuring things out. But he's family. He's always been a constant, a given. Our parents, retired now and living a few hours away, always doted on him, the charming younger son. I never resented it. Our roles were different. I was the responsible one. He was the free spirit. It worked. The day at the office passes uneventfully. Spreadsheets are conquered, emails answered, meetings attended. The usual rhythm. As I pack up to leave, I think about Clara, hoping her creative flow was productive. I picture her in the studio, a smudge of paint on her cheek, brow furrowed in concentration. That image brings a quiet warmth. Maybe we'll order Thai tonight, open a bottle of wine. Simple pleasures. Driving home, I feel that familiar sense of anticipation, of returning to my haven. The city lights begin to twinkle as dusk settles. I'm grateful for what I have. For Clara, for our life together. I even feel a pang of affection for Mike and his DIY misadventures. There's a rightness to it all, a sense of order. I don't know, of course, that this order is a carefully constructed illusion. I don't know that the ground beneath my feet is about to crack open, that the people I trust most implicitly are capable of a betrayal so profound it will redefine my understanding of everything. The peace I feel is the calm before a devastating storm, a storm that will leave nothing untouched, nothing unbroken. My contentment is a fragile thing, and its shattering is just around the corner. A few weeks pass. The rhythm of our lives continues, or so I believe. Clara seems a little more tired than usual, perhaps a bit more introspective. I attribute it to the pressure of her gallery work, the changing seasons. Autumn is settling in, the evenings drawing darker, cooler. One such evening, rain streaks down the living room window, blurring the city lights into soft, impressionistic daubs. A fire crackles in the hearth, its warmth pushing back the damp chill. I'm on the sofa, lost in a biography, a glass of red wine breathing on the coaster beside me. Clara comes in from the kitchen. She's carrying a tray, not with our usual mismatched mugs, but with 2 delicate teacups, a steaming pot, and a small plate of the lemon cookies she knows I love. There's something different about her tonight. A nervous energy hums beneath her usually calm surface. Her cheeks are flushed, her eyes overly bright. Perfect timing, I say, looking up from my book. I was just about to succumb to a craving for something sweet. What's the occasion for the fancy tea? She sets the tray down on the coffee table, her movements a little too precise, a little too deliberate. She avoids my eyes as she fusses with the cups. No occasion. Just felt like it. A cozy night in. She sits beside me, closer than usual, tucking her feet beneath her. She picks up her teacup but doesn't drink, just cradles it, warming her hands. I watch her, a small frown starting to form. She's definitely on edge. You okay? I ask gently. You seem a little keyed up. Did Mrs. Albright give you a hard time about the new pieces? She shakes her head, a quick, jerky movement. No, no, she loved them. Actually, she sold one already. The big blue abstract. To that collector from San Francisco. Clara, that's incredible! I exclaim, genuinely thrilled for her. This is big news. Why didn't you say something sooner? We should be celebrating. Champagne, not herbal tea. I start to get up, intending to fetch a bottle from the fridge, but her hand on my arm stops me. Her touch is light, yet surprisingly firm. No, John, please. Stay. Her voice is soft, a little tremulous. The tea is appropriate. For now. Now I'm properly concerned. My earlier ease evaporates. I put my book aside, turn to face her fully. What is it, sweetheart? You can tell me anything. You know that. She finally meets my eyes. Hers are wide, luminous, a strange cocktail of fear and a fragile, almost unbearable excitement. She takes a deep breath, then another, as if steeling herself. It's about us, she begins, her voice barely above a whisper. About our future. Remember how we talked, a long time ago, about maybe starting a family one day? When the time was right. My heart gives a peculiar thud. Those conversations. Late at night, whispered dreams after making love. We decided to wait, to build our careers, to savor our time as a couple. But the idea, the possibility, had always lingered, a gentle undercurrent to our plans. Of course, I remember, I say softly, my own breath catching a little. Very clearly. Is the time right, Clara? She nods, a slow, deliberate movement. A single tear escapes the corner of her eye, tracing a glistening path down her cheek. But she's smiling now, a watery, incandescent smile that makes the air in my lungs feel thick. I think so, she says, her voice trembling. I mean, it seems it is. John. I'm pregnant. Pregnant. The word hangs in the room, altering the very atmosphere, the very molecules of the air I'm breathing. Pregnant. Clara. Pregnant. A wave of something enormous, something tidal, washes over me. Disbelief, then a surging, overwhelming joy that constricts my chest and brings an answering sting to my own eyes. Pregnant? I manage, my voice a hoarse whisper. Are you sure? She laughs, a shaky, joyful sound that seems to echo the crackling of the fire. Yes. Very sure. I took a test. Then another. Then I went to Dr. Ramirez this afternoon. It's confirmed. We're going to have a baby. I reach for her then, pulling her into my arms, holding her tight against me. I bury my face in her hair, inhaling her familiar scent, now somehow new, imbued with this incredible revelation. A baby. Our baby. A tiny, miraculous fusion of our love, our hopes, our shared life. Oh, Clara, I breathe, my voice thick with emotion. Oh my God. This is the most wonderful news. Ever. I pull back slightly, my hands framing her face, searching her eyes. I see my own elation mirrored there, or what I believe to be its mirror. I kiss her, a deep, searching kiss, no longer just familiar and comfortable, but now charged with wonder, with the dawning reality of this impossible gift. A baby, I say, the words tasting new, extraordinary on my tongue. We're having a baby. I can't believe it. Questions tumble out, a rush of excited curiosity. When? How far along? Are you feeling okay? Morning sickness? Cravings? Tell me everything. Clara laughs again, that beautiful, joyous sound. Slow down. I'm about 6 weeks, Dr. Ramirez thinks. Due around early May. A spring baby. She pauses, a shadow briefly crossing her face, so fleeting I barely register it, lost as I am in the blaze of my own happiness. And yes, a little tired, a tiny bit nauseous in the mornings, but mostly just incredibly happy. And a little terrified. Terrified is good, I say, my grin widening. Means we understand the gravity. But happy is better. I'm ecstatic. I'm going to be a father. I say the words aloud, testing their weight, their sound. Father. Me. John. A dad. I gently place my hand on her stomach, still flat beneath her robe. A sense of profound awe washes over me. Inside her, a new life. Our life. Hello in there. I whisper, my voice choked with emotion. It's your dad. Clara covers my hand with her own, her eyes shining. He or she can't hear you yet, silly. But I'm sure they feel the love. We need to tell everyone. I exclaim, my mind racing. My parents, your mom. Mike. Oh, Mike's going to be an uncle. He'll be thrilled. He loves kids. Clara's smile falters for a split second, a tiny, almost imperceptible hesitation. Again, I'm too caught up in my own euphoria to truly process it. It's like a speck of dust on a masterpiece, momentarily noticed, then instantly forgotten in the overwhelming beauty of the whole. Let's keep it our secret, she says, her voice soft. Just for a little while longer. Until the first trimester is over, maybe? Just to be safe. Let it be just ours. Her reasoning seems sound. I nod, understanding. Okay. Our secret. For now. But it's the best secret I've ever kept. I kiss her again, then her forehead, her cheeks. I can't seem to stop touching her, can't stop smiling. The rain outside seems to have softened to a gentle patter, the fire to burn with a warmer, more inviting glow. The entire world has shifted on its axis, tilting towards a future I hadn't dared to fully imagine until this very moment, a future filled with tiny shoes and bedtime stories and the unbelievable miracle of creation. We talk for hours that night, long after the fire has died down to embers. We whisper names, some serious, some silly, discarding them with soft laughter. We speculate about who the baby will look like, whose temperament it will inherit. I find myself picturing a small hand gripping my finger, imagining myself teaching our child to ride a bike, to read their first words, to navigate the complexities of the world with kindness and courage. Clara talks about seeing the world anew through a child's eyes, about the new dimensions it will bring to her art. The anxieties are there, of course, buried deep beneath the joy, the immense responsibility, the inevitable changes to our lives, the fear of not being good enough. But tonight, they are whispers, easily drowned out by the exultant chorus of impending parenthood. This is what we've wanted, perhaps even without fully articulating how much. This is the natural, beautiful progression of our love story, the next, most important chapter. As we finally make our way upstairs, my arm around her waist, her head resting on my shoulder, I feel a sense of completeness I've never known before. I look at Clara, her face soft with happiness, imbued with a new, subtle radiance that I attribute to the miracle growing within her, and my heart swells with a love so profound, so overwhelming, it almost hurts. I fall asleep that night with a blissful smile on my face, my dreams filled with lullabies and the gurgling laughter of a baby. I am utterly, blissfully unaware that this perfect, incandescent joy is built on a foundation of lies. I have no inkling that the child I already love with every fiber of my being is a symbol not of our union, but of a betrayal so deep it will tear my world, my marriage, and my very sense of self into a million irreparable pieces. The purity of my happiness is a fragile, precious thing, poised on the precipice of an unimaginable darkness. 2 months. 60 days of walking on air, of shared smiles and secret, knowing glances with Clara. 60 days of my love for her deepening, expanding to encompass this new life we were creating together. I'd started reading parenting books, researching cribs, even found myself absently humming lullabies while crunching numbers at work. The world seemed brighter, imbued with a new layer of meaning. Clara, though, had become more delicate. More tired, yes, which was to be expected, but also more withdrawn. Her earlier glow seemed to have dimmed, replaced by a subtle, persistent anxiety she tried to mask with forced cheerfulness. I put it down to hormones, to the natural worries of a first-time mother. I tried to be more attentive, more supportive, reassuring her that we were in this together, that everything would be wonderful. A small, almost imperceptible distance had begun to grow between us, a slight coolness where once there was only warmth. I told myself it was temporary, a passing phase of pregnancy. I was an expert at explaining away the unsettling little details. Today is the day. Our first ultrasound. The day we'll see our baby for the first time, see that tiny heart beating. I'm practically buzzing with anticipation as we sit in the pastel-colored waiting room of Dr. Evans' office. Generic, soothing music drifts from hidden speakers. I'm flipping through a parenting magazine, not really absorbing the words, my leg jiggling with nervous energy. Can you believe it? I whisper to Clara, squeezing her hand. Her hand in mine feels cold, a little limp. We're actually going to see him. Or her. See the heartbeat. This is surreal. Clara forces a smile. It doesn't reach her eyes, which seem shadowed, tired. I know, she says, her voice quiet. It's a lot. A nurse with a kind, professional smile calls Clara's name. I help her up, my arm around her waist, feeling the small, firm curve of her belly. Our baby. My baby. The thought sends a thrill through me. Inside the exam room, Dr. Evans greets us warmly. Clara lies down on the table, her gown adjusted. The nurse applies the cool gel to her abdomen. I'm holding Clara's hand tightly, my eyes glued to the large monitor screen beside the exam table. Dr. Evans moves the transducer across Clara's skin. Static, then a grainy, black and white image swims into view. And there, at the center, a small, pulsating flicker. And there we are, Dr. Evans says, her voice calm and reassuring. See that little flicker? That's your baby's heartbeat. Strong and steady. Right around 160 beats per minute. Perfect. A gasp escapes me. My eyes mist over. I squeeze Clara's hand, turning to share this incredible moment with her. Clara, look, I whisper, my voice choked with emotion. That's our baby. She's staring at the screen, but her expression is unreadable. Tears well in her eyes, but they don't look like tears of pure joy. There's something else there, something I can't name, pain, guilt, a profound, heartbreaking sadness. My own elation falters slightly, a tiny ripple of unease. Dr. Evans continues, taking measurements, murmuring technical terms. Everything looks good. Growth is on track for, let's see, about 14 weeks gestation. Measurements are consistent. 14 weeks. I frown. Something feels off. 14 weeks? I say, trying to keep my voice casual. I thought. Clara, didn't Dr. Ramirez say around 12 weeks at your last appointment? When you first told me, you said you were 6 weeks along. That was, let's see, 10 weeks ago. So that would make it 16 weeks, not 14. The math doesn't quite add up. A small, cold knot begins to form in the pit of my stomach. Clara tenses beside me. Dr. Evans consults her chart. Dr. Ramirez's initial estimate, based on last menstrual period, was for a due date around early May. This measurement would put the due date a bit earlier, mid-April. It's not uncommon for dates to shift slightly once we get a clear ultrasound measurement, especially if cycles are irregular. Clara, was your cycle regular before conception? Clara's face is ashen. She stares fixedly at the ceiling, avoiding my gaze, avoiding Dr. Evans' gaze. Sometimes, her voice is barely audible, a thread of sound. Not always. The cold knot in my stomach tightens, spreads. A 2-week discrepancy feels like more than a slight shift. If she was only 4 weeks along when she told me, rather than 6, would she have been so certain? So quick to share the news? The discrepancy gnaws at me, a discordant note in the symphony of my joy. So, a surprise early arrival, maybe? I try to joke, forcing a lightness I don't feel. We'll have to speed up our nursery decorating. Dr. Evans smiles, oblivious to the sudden, suffocating tension in the room. Could be. Or the initial dating was just a bit off. The ultrasound is generally more accurate at this stage. Baby looks perfectly healthy. That's the main thing. Would you like some printouts of the images? Yes, please. I manage, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. The rest of the appointment is a blur. We're given the printouts, fuzzy, black and white images of what was supposed to be our future. My earlier elation has curdled into a sickening unease. The drive home is silent, a heavy, oppressive quiet filling the car. I grip the steering wheel, my knuckles white. Clara stares out her window, the ultrasound photos clutched in her lap like a death warrant. Clara. My voice is quiet, dangerously so. Talk to me. She doesn't respond, just gives a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. That 2-week difference. I press, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. It's a bit more than a slight shift, isn't it? When exactly did you conceive? When we first talked, you were so sure about the timing. 6 weeks. Now it's different. I pull into our driveway, cut the engine. The sudden silence amplifies the unspoken accusations, the terrible questions hanging in the air between us. I need you to be honest with me, Clara. I say, my voice raw. What's going on? She finally turns to me, and her eyes are filled with a desperate, hunted look I've never seen before. She starts to cry, not loudly, but with silent, racking sobs that shake her entire body. My heart clenches with a strange mixture of pity and a growing, terrifying anger. I reach for her, but she flinches away, as if my touch would burn her. I can't, she chokes out through her tears. Don't make me. Can't what, Clara? My voice is hardening, the cold dread consuming me. Can't tell me the truth? What truth? Is there something I don't know? About this baby? Our baby. The words, our baby, hang there, a mockery. Her reaction, her evasion, the inconsistencies, her pallor, her tears, it all starts to coalesce, forming a horrifying, unthinkable picture in my mind. All those little moments of her withdrawal, her subtle anxieties, things I'd dismissed, now flare up like warning signs I'd been too blind, too trusting, to see. Clara, look at me. My command is quiet, but steel-edged. She slowly turns her tear-streaked face towards me, her expression one of utter desolation, of someone already condemned. Is this baby? I can barely force the words out, the implication too monstrous, too devastating to articulate. Is it? She closes her eyes, a fresh wave of tears escaping, tracing paths through the makeup on her cheeks. And then, she nods. A tiny, almost imperceptible movement. But it's enough. It's a cannonball tearing through the hull of my life. No. I whisper, a raw, broken sound ripped from my throat. No, it can't be. You're telling me, this child. I'm so sorry, John. Her voice is a choked, ragged whisper, barely audible above her sobs. So sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I was going to. I don't know what I was going to do. I recoil as if she'd physically struck me. The air rushes out of my lungs. The vibrant colors of the afternoon, the green of our lawn, the blue of the sky, seem to leach away, leaving everything stark, gray, terrifyingly empty. The ultrasound photos fall from her lap, scattering on the car floor, fuzzy images of a dream that has just exploded into a nightmare. Not mine. My voice is dangerously low, trembling with a dawning, catastrophic understanding. The baby isn't mine? Clara can only nod again, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with the force of her grief, or her guilt. I can't tell which. I don't care. I stare ahead, through the windshield, at our house. Our home. A place that, mere hours ago, represented love, security, a future filled with laughter and tiny footsteps. Now, it looks like a mausoleum, a monument to my own stupidity, my own blind trust. The carefully constructed edifice of my life, my marriage, my impending fatherhood, my very identity, crumbles around me, dissolving into dust and ashes with that single, silent nod. The pain is a physical thing, a brutal blow to my chest, stealing my breath, crushing my heart. Betrayal. A betrayal so profound, so intimate, it feels like a vital part of my soul has been violently ripped out. I feel cold, an icy, terrifying cold seeping into my bones, despite the warmth of the autumn day. The joyful news, once a beacon of pure light, has become the harbinger of an unbearable, suffocating darkness. I fumble for the door handle, needing to escape the claustrophobic confines of the car, of this new, horrific reality. I stumble out onto the lawn, my legs unsteady. I take a few shaky steps, then stop, my hands clenched into fists at my sides, my whole body trembling with a mixture of shock and a nascent, terrible rage. I look up at the sky, a vast, indifferent blue canvas, and a single, ragged sob escapes me, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony. The truth is out, and it is a truth that will destroy me. I stand in the center of our living room. Our living room. The words feel like ash in my mouth. This is the room where Clara, my wife, told me we were going to have a baby. My baby. The memory is a searing brand on my mind. The joy I felt then now a cruel mockery. I feel hollowed out, a walking automaton going through motions I don't understand. Clara followed me in from the car, a ghost herself, hovering near the doorway. She looks small, broken, but I can't find an ounce of pity in the vast, echoing cavern of my shock. The ultrasound photos, those black and white lies, are probably still on the floor of the car. Good. Let them rot. The silence in the room is a living entity, thick and suffocating, broken only by the ragged sound of Clara's breathing and the frantic, panic thumping of my own heart against my ribs. It feels like the world has tilted on its axis, and I'm struggling to find my footing on a landscape that is suddenly alien and treacherous. I turn to face her. My face feels like a mask, stiff, unnatural. I can't imagine what I look like. I hope I look terrifying. Who? The word is flat, devoid of inflection. It's not a question, it's a demand. A single, brutal syllable. Clara flinches as if I'd shouted, though I hadn't. She wraps her arms around herself, a pathetic gesture of self-protection. John, please, she whispers, her voice trembling. Who, Clara? I repeat, louder this time, a tremor of the rage I'm trying to suppress leaking into my voice. The calm is cracking. Who was the father of the child you are carrying? The child you let me believe was mine for 2 months? The child I have loved, planned for, dreamed about? Who did this to us? To me? She shrinks back, her eyes wide with a fear that, in some dark, twisted part of my shattered heart, I'm glad to see. She deserves to be afraid. She deserves to feel a fraction of the agony she's inflicted on me. I can't, she stammers, tears streaming down her face. You can, I say, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. I take a step towards her, and she flattens herself against the doorframe. You will. You owe me that much, Clara. You owe me the name of the man you chose over me, over our marriage, over everything we built. My hands are clenched so tight my knuckles are white, my nails biting into my palms. I can feel the blood pounding in my temples. She looks at me, her face a mess of tears and despair. And then she says it. A name that makes no sense. A name that rips through the remaining vestiges of my sanity like a razor blade. It's Mike. Mike. My brother. My younger brother, Mike. The name hangs in the air, an obscenity. For a long moment, I don't understand. The words compute, but the meaning is impossible. It's like she's speaking a foreign language, one I can't decipher. Mike? My brother? It's a cruel joke. It has to be. I stare at her, waiting for her to retract it, to say she's lying, that she's confused, anything but this. But she just stands there, sobbing, her eyes downcast, the picture of guilt and shame. And in that moment, I know she's telling the truth. The impossible, unthinkable, soul-destroying truth. A sound escapes me, something inhuman, a strangled cry of disbelief and an agony so profound it feels like my chest is being torn open. Mike. My brother. The one I'd played with as a child, confided in as a teenager, supported as an adult. The one who was supposed to be my best man, my family, my blood. He wouldn't. He couldn't. But Clara's silence, her averted gaze, screams his guilt. And hers. The coldness I felt earlier intensifies, becoming a glacial freeze that numbs me to the core. It's a betrayal on a scale I can't comprehend. Not just my wife, the woman I loved, the woman I trusted with my entire being, but my brother, my own flesh and blood, together, conspiring, laughing at me behind my back. The thought is a fresh wave of nausea. Images flash through my mind, disjointed, sickening. Mike, borrowing my drill, his easy charm, his casual presence in our home. Clara's slight stiffness when I mentioned him, her too bright replies. Moments I dismissed, now replaying with horrifying clarity, each one a tiny, poison dart. Had they been together then? In my house? In my bed? The questions are a torrent, each one more vile than the last. Mike? I finally managed to say, my voice a shredded whisper. My brother. Mike? The words taste like bile. How? When? Clara shakes her head, unable to speak, her sobs a constant, grating sound in the ruins of my world. How could you? I'm not shouting anymore. My voice is eerily calm, the calm of utter devastation. How could he? The double betrayal is a weight too heavy to bear. It crushes me, grinds me into dust. My wife. My brother. The two people, besides my parents, who were supposed to be my anchors in this world. And they've both, in one catastrophic act, become my destroyers. I look around the living room, at the familiar objects, the books, the paintings, the photographs. Everything is tainted. Everything is a lie. Our life together, a meticulously crafted deception. And I, the trusting fool, the unsuspecting cuckold. The word explodes in my mind, ugly and brutal. I feel a sudden, overwhelming urge to destroy something, to smash, to break, to externalize the cataclysm raging within me. But I'm frozen, paralyzed by the sheer enormity of it. Mike. It keeps circling back to him. The casual way he'd been in our house. Had he looked at me, knowing this? Had he shared private jokes with Clara, at my expense? The love I felt for my brother, a steady, uncomplicated affection, curdles into something dark and poisonous. It's replaced by a hatred so potent it chokes me. And for Clara, there's a void. The love I had for her, the love that had defined so much of my adult life, has been annihilated, vaporized, leaving behind only a gaping, bleeding wound. Get out, I say, the words barely audible, but carrying the weight of absolute finality. Clara looks up, her eyes wide, stricken. John, what? Get out. I repeat, louder this time, each word a shard of ice. Take your things. I don't want to see you. I don't want you in this house. My house. No longer our house. She hesitates, opens her mouth as if to plead, but I cut her off. Now, Clara. The realization that it's truly over, that this isn't a nightmare I can wake up from, seems to finally hit her. She turns, stumbling, and makes her way towards the stairs, her sobs echoing in the sudden, vast emptiness of the home we once shared. I stand there, alone in the wreckage. The knowledge that my brother, Mike, is the father of the child Clara is carrying is a truth that will forever be seared into my soul. It's a betrayal that transcends infidelity. It's a fundamental violation of family, of trust, of everything I held sacred. And the pain of it, I know, is only just beginning. My world hasn't just been shattered, it's been poisoned from within, by the two people I should have been able to trust above all others. I don't know how long I stood there after Clara went upstairs, a hollow man in a hollow house. Minutes? Hours? Time had lost all meaning. The initial shock, the raw agony, was beginning to curdle into a cold, hard rage. A rage directed not just at Clara, but with an even greater intensity, at Mike. My brother. The word felt like a foreign object in my mouth, something I could no longer claim. I had to see him. I had to hear it from his lips. Or maybe I just wanted to see if he had the gall to look me in the eye. My car keys felt heavy in my hand as I left the house. I didn't know where Clara would go, and in that moment, I didn't care. My focus had narrowed to one person, Mike. He lived in a small apartment across town, a typically bachelorish place, always a bit messy, smelling faintly of stale beer and unfulfilled ambitions. I drove on autopilot, the city lights blurring past, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Each red light felt like an eternity, each green light a rush towards a confrontation I both craved and dreaded. When I reached his building, I didn't buzz. I knew he often left the front door of the building slightly ajar. I found his apartment, number 3B, and pounded on the door, not with a polite knock, but with the force of the storm brewing inside me. The door opened, and there he was. Mike. My younger brother. He was wearing a faded band t-shirt and jeans, a surprised, slightly sheepish grin on his face, the kind he always wore when he was caught off guard. John. Hey, man, what's up? He said, his voice casual, friendly. As if nothing was wrong. As if he hadn't just detonated my entire existence. The sight of him, his easy smile, his feigned ignorance, was like a lit match to gasoline. The cold rage I'd been nursing ignited into a white-hot inferno. Don't, hey man, me, you son of a bitch, I snarled, my voice low and shaking. I pushed past him into the small, cluttered living room. He looked genuinely surprised now, his smile faltering. Whoa, John, what's going on? You okay? He actually sounded concerned. The audacity of it nearly made me laugh, a harsh, broken sound. I whirled around to face him. Okay. Am I okay? You want to know if I'm okay? My voice was rising, a dangerous tremor running through it. Clara told me, Mike. She told me everything. His face changed then. The surprise, the feigned concern, vanished. Replaced by what? Not guilt, not shame, not immediately. Something else. Something calculating. He closed the door slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. Told you what, John? He asked, his voice quiet now, cautious. Don't play dumb with me, Mike. Not now. I was shaking, my hands clenched into fists. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to break every bone in his smug, treacherous body. The baby. Clara's baby. It's yours, isn't it? He didn't deny it. He just stood there, leaning against the door, and a slow, almost imperceptible smirk began to play around his lips. It was the smirk that did it. The absolute, unadulterated arrogance of it. So, he said, his voice infused with a casual insolence that was like a knife twisting in my gut. She told you. Big deal. Big deal. I echoed, incredulous. The sheer callousness of his response stole my breath. It's my wife, Mike. My life. You slept with my wife. She's pregnant with your child, a child I thought was mine. He shrugged, a small, dismissive gesture. Yeah, well, these things happen, bro. Bro star. The word was an insult, a mockery. He had the nerve to call me bro after this. Happen. I was almost shouting now, the control I was desperately trying to maintain slipping away. They don't just happen, Mike. You make them happen. You made a choice. You both did. To betray me. Your own brother. And then he said the words that would forever be burned into my memory, words that showcase the depths of his character, or lack thereof. He pushed himself off the door, took a step further into the room, his posture no longer cautious but almost proud. "Look, John," he said, his voice taking on a boasting tone, a smug superiority that made my blood boil. "Clara and I. We have a connection. Something you obviously couldn't give her. She came to me. And yeah, the kid's mine. And honestly, I'm not sorry. He's going to be a great kid. My kid. My kid." He said it with such possessiveness, such pride, as if he were announcing a promotion, not confessing to the most heinous betrayal imaginable. There was no remorse in his eyes, no hint of apology. Only a defiant arrogance, a sickening triumph. He was boasting. Boasting about destroying my marriage, about fathering a child with my wife. I stared at him, speechless for a moment, reeling from the sheer audacity, the cruelty of his words. The image I'd always had of Mike, my sometimes irresponsible but fundamentally decent younger brother, shattered into a million pieces, replaced by this monster. This smug, arrogant stranger who seemed to revel in the pain he'd caused. "You're proud of this?" I finally managed, my voice a hoarse whisper. "You're actually proud of destroying my life?" He had the gall to chuckle, a low, condescending sound. "Proud? I don't know about proud, but things worked out. I'm going to be a father. Maybe it was meant to be, you know? Maybe you and Clara just weren't." The casual way he dismissed my marriage, my love for Clara, my entire future, was breathtaking in its cruelty. He didn't see the devastation he'd wrought. Or, worse, he saw it, and he didn't care. Or, even worse, he enjoyed it. I wanted to lunge at him, to wipe that smirk off his face with my fists. But a strange sense of futility washed over me. What would it solve? Hitting him wouldn't undo the betrayal. It wouldn't make the child mine. It wouldn't restore my broken life. It would just be a release, a momentary explosion of the rage that was consuming me. "You're disgusting," I said, the words filled with a cold, venomous contempt. "You're not my brother. You're nothing to me." He just shrugged again, that infuriating, dismissive gesture. "Whatever you say, John. Truth is truth." I looked at him one last time, at this stranger who wore my brother's face. The arrogance, the complete lack of empathy, the casual cruelty, it was all there, undisguised. He wasn't just unrepentant. He was gloating. He truly believed he'd won some kind of sick prize. I turned and walked out of his apartment, leaving him standing there in his cluttered living room, the echo of his smug words ringing in my ears. The confrontation hadn't brought closure. It hadn't brought answers I could understand. It had only deepened the wound, exposing the rotten core of the man I once called my brother. His arrogance was another layer of betrayal, another twist of the knife in an already fatal wound. And as I walked out into the cold night air, I knew this was far from over. The devastation was just beginning to unfold. The drive away from Mike's apartment was a blur of headlights and a roaring in my ears that wasn't just the engine. His words, his smirk, his utter lack of remorse, they played on a loop in my mind, each repetition a fresh stab of pain and rage. Asterisk, the kid's mine. And honestly, I'm not sorry. Asterisk, how could someone be so callous, so cruel, especially to their own brother? I didn't go home. I couldn't. The house was a mausoleum of my dead marriage, a place haunted by lies and betrayal. Clara would be there, or her things would be. I couldn't face it. Not yet. I drove aimlessly for a while, the city streets a meaningless labyrinth. My mind was a chaotic storm, but one thought began to emerge, a tiny, desperate flicker of hope in the overwhelming darkness. My parents. Mom and Dad. They lived a few hours away, in the quiet town where Mike and I grew up. They were the anchors of our family, the arbiters of right and wrong, the ones who had always preached the importance of loyalty, of family sticking together. Surely, they would see the monstrosity of what Mike and Clara had done. Surely, they would offer comfort, condemnation for the guilty, support for me, their betrayed son. The decision solidified. I had to tell them. I needed them. I needed their validation, their understanding. I needed to hear them say that what had happened was an abomination, that I wasn't crazy for feeling this shattered, this enraged. It was late, well past midnight, but I found myself turning the car onto the highway, heading north. I called them from the road, my voice hoarse, trying to keep the tremor out of it. "Mom," I said, when she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "It's John. I need to see you. Something's happened. Something terrible." I could hear the immediate concern in her voice, the sleepy confusion giving way to alarm. "John? What is it? Are you okay? Is Clara okay?" "No, Mom," I said, the words catching in my throat. "No one is okay. I'm driving up. I'll be there in a couple of hours. Can I talk to you and Dad? Of course, sweetheart, she said, her voice filled with a worried tenderness that brought a fresh wave of tears to my eyes. We'll be here. Drive carefully. The rest of the drive was a torment. I replayed the coming conversation in my mind, over and over. How would I tell them? How could I articulate the sheer scale of this betrayal? Mom, Dad, my wife is pregnant, but the baby isn't mine. It's Mike's. Your son, my brother, slept with my wife and got her pregnant. The words sounded insane, even in the privacy of my own thoughts. I pictured their faces. Shock, certainly. Disbelief. Anger at Mike, at Clara. Sympathy for me. I imagined my mother's arms around me, my father's stern but supportive words. They would be my refuge. They had to be. They were my parents. They loved me. They loved Mike too, of course, but this was beyond the pale. This was a betrayal that transcended any normal sibling rivalry or youthful indiscretion. This was a fundamental violation of everything they had taught us. As I drove through the dark, empty countryside, the miles ticking by, I clung to this hope. It was the only thing keeping me from pulling over to the side of the road and just ceasing to exist. The thought of their support, their righteous anger on my behalf, was a lifeline in the churning sea of my despair. I rehearsed the words, trying to find a way to lay out the facts calmly, coherently, despite the inferno raging inside me. I didn't want to sound hysterical, unhinged. I wanted them to see the calculated cruelty of it, the depth of the deception. I remembered all the times my parents had mediated disputes between Mike and me when we were kids. Mike, usually the instigator, charming his way out of trouble. Me, the earnest, sometimes frustrated older brother, often left feeling like my grievances weren't fully heard. But this was different. This wasn't a broken toy or a squabble over a video game. This was adultery. This was a child conceived in deceit. This was the destruction of a marriage, the fracturing of a family. Surely, they would see the clear lines of right and wrong here. Surely, their loyalty would lie with the son who had been so grievously wronged. The familiar turnoff for their town appeared, and my heart began to pound with a mixture of dread and desperate anticipation. The town was quiet, asleep under a blanket of stars. Their house, the house I grew up in, looked just the same, a comforting beacon of light in the darkness. The porch light was on, a welcoming glow. I parked the car, took a deep, shaky breath, and walked up the familiar path. This was it. This was where I would find solace, where I would find justice, where my family would rally around me. The alternative, that they wouldn't, that they too would somehow fail me, was too terrible to contemplate. It simply wasn't possible. They were my parents. They would understand. They had to. My entire remaining sense of worth, of belonging, felt like it hinged on their reaction. I knocked on the door, my hand trembling, praying that the people on the other side would be the sanctuary I so desperately needed. The door opened, and my mother stood there, her face etched with worry, her eyes searching mine. My father was just behind her, his expression grim. They both looked older, more tired than I remembered, or maybe it was just the harsh light of the porch lamp in the late hour. "John," Mom breathed, pulling me into a hug. Her embrace was tight, maternal, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a tiny sliver of the comfort I craved. Dad put a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm. "Come in, son," he said, his voice gravelly. "What's happened? You look terrible." They led me into the familiar living room, the one filled with decades of family photos, including countless pictures of Mike and me at various stages of our lives, smiling, oblivious to the future. The irony was a bitter pill. We sat, me on the edge of the old floral sofa, them in their usual armchairs opposite me. The air was thick with unspoken questions, with a heavy, anxious anticipation. I started to speak, the words I'd rehearsed tumbling out, clumsy and raw despite my best efforts. I told them everything. About Clara's pregnancy, my initial joy. About the ultrasound, the discrepancy in the dates, the dawning, sickening realization. And then, the hardest part. About Clara's confession. That Mike was the father. As I spoke, I watched their faces. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock, with disbelief. Tears welled, spilling down her cheeks. Dad's expression hardened, his jaw tightening, his eyes narrowing. He looked angry. Good. That was the reaction I expected. The reaction I needed. When I finished, a heavy silence descended on the room, broken only by Mom's quiet sobs. I waited, my heart pounding for their condemnation of Mike, for their words of support for me. Mom was the first to speak, her voice trembling. "Oh, John. Oh, my dear boy. This is dreadful. Unthinkable." She looked at Dad, her eyes pleading, as if seeking confirmation, or perhaps a solution he couldn't possibly provide. Dad finally spoke, his voice low, measured, but with an undercurrent I couldn't quite decipher. "Mike," he said, the name sounding heavy, laden. "And Clara." He shook his head slowly. "This is a terrible mess, son. A terrible, terrible mess." A mess. Yes, it was a mess. But it was more than that. It was a betrayal. A desecration. I waited for more. For the anger, the outrage on my behalf. What are you going to do?" Mom asked, her gaze fixed on me, her face a mask of distress. "Do?" I echoed, a little confused. I don't know. I told Clara to leave. I confronted Mike. I then recounted Mike's reaction, his arrogance, his complete lack of remorse, his boasting. As I described Mike's words, I saw a flicker of something in Dad's eyes. Was it anger? Disappointment? It was hard to tell. Mom just wept silently. "He said that?" Dad asked, his voice tight. "He showed no remorse?" "None," I confirmed, a bitter taste in my mouth. "He was proud of it. He said the child was his, and he wasn't sorry." Another silence. This one felt different. Longer. Heavier. I looked from my mother's tear-streaked face to my father's inscrutable one. A cold dread began to seep into me, chilling the faint warmth of hope I'd managed to cling to. Then, Dad cleared his throat. He looked not at me, but at a point somewhere over my shoulder. When he finally spoke, his words were like stones, each one landing with a sickening thud in the pit of my stomach. "John," he began, his voice devoid of the warmth I expected, replaced by a strange, almost detached pragmatism. "This is a tragedy. For everyone involved. For you. For Clara. And yes, for Mike." "For Mike?" Asterisk, my mind reeled. How is this a tragedy for Mike? He was the architect of this destruction, along with Clara. "But a child is involved now, son," Dad continued, his gaze finally meeting mine. And what I saw there was not the unwavering support I'd anticipated, but something else. Something that looked chillingly like resignation. An innocent child. And that changes things. Mom nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. "A baby, John. A new life. Your nephew. Or niece." "My nephew?" The word felt alien. This child was a symbol of my deepest betrayal, not a welcome addition to the family. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, the cold dread intensifying, spreading through my veins like ice. Dad took a deep breath. "We've always believed in family, John. In forgiveness. This is a terrible mistake, a grievous sin, yes. But life goes on. And this child will be our grandchild." My blood ran cold. Grandchild. He was already claiming this child, Mike's child, conceived in adultery, as part of the family. What about me? What about my pain, my broken life? They made a mistake, Mom added, her voice pleading, as if trying to convince herself as much as me. "A terrible, terrible mistake. But people make mistakes, John. And a baby is a blessing. In its own way. A blessing?" This felt like a curse. I stared at them, my parents, the people I had trusted to be my staunchest allies, and I felt a profound sense of unreality. Were they really saying this? Were they minimizing the betrayal, the devastation, for the sake of a child that wasn't even born yet? For the sake of Mike? "So, what?" I asked, my voice shaking with a dawning, horrified understanding. You're just going to accept this? Accept them? Mike and Clara? And this baby?" Dad looked down at his hands, then back at me, his expression firm, resolute. "We don't condone what they did, John. It was wrong. Terribly wrong. But they are still our son, and Clara has been like a daughter to us. And this child will be our blood. We cannot turn our backs on family. We have to find a way to move forward. To support them as they prepare for this child. Support them." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not support me, their betrayed son. Support them. The adulterers. The betrayers. "So, you're giving them your blessing?" I asked, the words incredulous, choked with a pain that was rapidly eclipsing even the pain of Clara and Mike's betrayal. This was my own parents. Mom reached out a hand towards me, but I flinched away. "It's not about blessings, John," she said, her voice soft, pleading. "It's about pragmatism. About making the best of a terrible situation. For the sake of the child. For the sake of the child, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. What about for my sake? What about the vows they broke? The trust they shattered? The brother who stabbed his own brother in the back? Dad sighed, a heavy, weary sound. Life is complicated, son. Sometimes there are no easy answers. Sometimes we have to choose the path that causes the least ongoing damage. And ostracizing them, turning our backs on our own son and his child, that would create a wound in this family that might never heal. A wound that might never heal? What did he think they had done to me? I looked at my parents, at these two people who were supposed to be my ultimate protectors, my unwavering supporters, and I saw strangers. Strangers who were choosing my betrayer, my brother, over me. Strangers who were prioritizing the unborn child of an adulterous affair over the sanity and well-being of their devastated son. The last vestiges of my hope, my desperate need for their validation, crumbled into dust. This wasn't just a lack of support. This was an endorsement of the betrayal. This was them, my own parents, siding with Mike and Clara. This was the ultimate abandonment. I stood up, my legs shaking. I couldn't breathe in that room anymore. The air was thick with their betrayal, their skewed sense of loyalty. I can't believe this, I whispered, more to myself than to them. I can't believe you. I turned and walked out of the living room, out of the house I grew up in, away from the parents who had just inflicted the deepest, most unforgivable wound of all. Their shocking stance wasn't just a disappointment, it was a fundamental betrayal of everything I believed family stood for. And in that moment, I knew I was truly, utterly alone. Leaving my parents' house was like stepping off a cliff into an abyss. The faint, desperate hope that had carried me there had been brutally extinguished, replaced by a chilling, profound sense of desolation. It wasn't just that they hadn't offered the comfort and condemnation I'd craved. They had actively sided with my betrayers, cloaking their decision in the guise of family unity and concern for an unborn child. A child conceived in deceit, a child whose very existence was a testament to my ruin. The drive back towards the city, I couldn't call it home anymore, was a journey through a landscape of utter despair. The world outside my car windows seemed to have leached of all color, all meaning. Headlights from oncoming cars were blinding, accusatory. Streetlights cast a sickly, jaundiced glow. The city, when I finally reached its outskirts, felt alien, hostile. A place where I no longer belonged. My wife had betrayed me. My brother had betrayed me. And now, my parents had betrayed me. The three pillars of my life, the people who were supposed to be my bedrock, had crumbled simultaneously, leaving me adrift in a sea of pain, with no anchor, no shore in sight. The isolation was absolute, a suffocating blanket smothering any spark of hope, any possibility of solace. I didn't go back to the house I'd shared with Clara. The thought of it, of her presence, or even the ghost of her presence, was unbearable. I found a cheap, anonymous motel on the outskirts of the city, a place where lives frayed and unraveled, a fitting backdrop for my own disintegration. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and despair. It was perfect. For days, I existed in a kind of limbo. I didn't eat. I barely slept. When I did, my dreams were a torment of grotesque images. Clara and Mike laughing, my parents holding their child aloft, their faces beaming, while I stood outside in the cold, watching through a frosted window. I'd wake up sweating, my heart pounding, the reality even more painful than the nightmares. The world outside the grimy motel window continued, indifferent to my suffering. People went to work, laughed, loved, lived their lives, oblivious to the cataclysm that had engulfed mine. I watched them from a distance, feeling like an alien observing a species I no longer understood, a club I was no longer a member of. The simplest interactions, ordering a coffee, paying for gas, felt monumental, requiring an effort I could barely summon. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, a relic from a life that no longer existed. My phone buzzed occasionally. Text from concerned colleagues wondering where I was. A voicemail from Clara, her voice thick with tears, pleading for me to talk to her. I deleted it without listening. And nothing. Nothing from Mike. Nothing more from my parents. Their silence was a confirmation of their choice, a final, damning verdict. The rage I'd felt, the white-hot fury, had cooled, congealing into a hard, bitter knot of grief and a profound, pervasive numbness. It was as if all my emotions had been burned out, leaving only a hollow shell. Sometimes, a wave of pain would wash over me, so intense it would leave me breathless, doubled over, clutching my chest. But mostly, there was just nothing. A vast, empty, gray expanse where my life used to be. I thought about my future, or the lack of it. What was there to look forward to? My marriage was over. My family had disowned me, in essence if not in explicit words. My closest relationships, the ones that had defined me, were not just broken, but revealed to be rotten at their core. Who was I, without them? What was the point of anything? The isolation was more than just physical separation. It was a severing of trust, of belonging, of shared history. I felt like an amputee, phantom limbs aching for connections that were no longer there, that had been violently torn away. The people I had loved most in the world had become strangers, worse than strangers. They were the architects of my desolation. I'd look in the mirror and see a ghost staring back. Sunken eyes, unshaven face, a haunted expression I didn't recognize. This wasn't John, the competent analyst, the loving husband, the loyal brother and son. This was someone else. Someone broken. Someone utterly, terrifyingly alone. The silence in the motel room was deafening, broken only by the hum of the ancient air conditioner and the distant wail of sirens. Each sound seemed to amplify my solitude, my abandonment. There was no one to call, no one to turn to. The friends we'd had were our friends, Clara's and mine. How could I possibly explain this to them? The shame was a heavy cloak, smothering me. I realized, with a chilling clarity, that I had become an inconvenience, an obstacle to their new, twisted version of family. My pain, my grief, my righteous anger, these were impediments to their desire for a smooth, uncomplicated acceptance of the new reality. And so, I had been excised, cast out, left to deal with the wreckage alone. The world had not just turned gray, it had become a hostile, alien landscape. And I was a solitary figure, trudging through its ruins, with no map, no compass, and no hope of ever finding my way back to the life I once knew, the life that had been stolen from me. The isolation was complete, and it was crushing me. Weeks bled into a month. I eventually left the motel, found a small, furnished apartment on the other side of the city, as far away from my old life as I could get without actually leaving. It was a sterile place, devoid of personality, which suited the emptiness inside me. I went through the motions of living, work, when I could drag myself there, tasteless meals eaten alone, long, empty evenings staring at the four walls. The divorce papers arrived, delivered by a courier, impersonal, efficient. Clara hadn't even had the courage to face me. I signed them without reading them too closely. What was the point? The marriage was dead, murdered by her and my brother. The legalities were just a postmortem. It was through a reluctant, pitying acquaintance, someone who still felt a residual loyalty to me, or perhaps was just a gossip, that I began to hear news of the new family unit. My parents, true to their word, had apparently embraced their new role as future grandparents with a disturbing enthusiasm. I heard that Clara had moved in with Mike, into his cramped apartment. I pictured them there, playing house, her belly growing with his child, my brother's child. The image was a constant, sickening torment. Then came the reports of family gatherings. My parents hosting Sunday dinners. Clara and Mike were there, of course. My mother, I was told, was fussing over Clara, ensuring she was comfortable, eating enough. My father, reportedly, was engaging Mike in conversations about fatherhood, offering advice, perhaps even a perverse sort of pride in his son's newfound responsibility. Each snippet of news was like a fresh twist of the knife. They were building a new family, a grotesque parody on the ashes of my life. And they were doing it openly, without shame, sanctioned and blessed by our parents. I imagined those dinners, the conversations, the laughter. Were they laughing at me? Did they even speak my name? Or was I the unmentionable ghost at their feast, the inconvenient truth they were all trying so hard to ignore, to erase? One day, I drove past my parents' house. I don't know why. A masochistic urge, perhaps. I saw Mike's car parked in the driveway, and then I saw them in the backyard. My father was grilling. My mother was sitting on the porch swing, Clara beside her. Clara was heavily pregnant now, her condition undeniable. Mike was standing near the grill, laughing at something my father said. They looked happy, content. A perfect little family tableau. The sight was a physical blow. It stole the air from my lungs. This was my family. My parents. My brother. The woman who had been my wife. And they were carrying on as if I had never existed, or as if my pain was a minor inconvenience, easily swept under the rug. The casualness of their happiness, the ease with which they had erased me from the picture, was the most brutal part. It wasn't just that they had betrayed me. It was that they seemed to feel no guilt, no remorse for the devastation they had caused. They had simply moved on, reformed their allegiances, and left me to pick up the shattered pieces of my life alone. I heard about the baby shower. My mother organized it, apparently. A joyous occasion celebrating the impending arrival of her new grandchild. My grandchild. The words echoed my father's from that terrible night. They had fully embraced this new reality, this new lineage. I wondered if they ever thought about me. Did my mother, as she knitted tiny booties, ever feel a pang of guilt for her other son, the one whose dreams of fatherhood had been so cruelly stolen? Did my father, as he offered Mike paternal advice, ever remember the son he had effectively disowned? Did Mike, as he accepted their blessings and support, ever feel a moment's shame for what he had done to his own brother? Did Clara, as she prepared for the birth of her child, ever regret the lies, the deceit, the destruction of our marriage? I doubted it. Their actions spoke louder than any words. They had chosen their path. They had chosen each other. And in doing so, they had irrevocably chosen to exclude me. This new family unit was a constant, throbbing ache in my existence. It was a daily reminder of my isolation, my obsolescence. They were building a future, a family, on the foundation of my deepest wounds. And the world, or at least their world, seemed to be applauding them for it. The grotesque parody of it all was what ate at me the most. The way they had twisted betrayal into a new beginning, deceit into a family bond. It was a perversion of everything I had ever believed in, everything I had ever held sacred. And I was the silent, unwilling witness to their charade, a ghost haunting the periphery of their new, happy life. A life built on my pain. The baby was born. A boy. I heard it through the grapevine, the same reluctant purveyors of news who seemed to take a morbid pleasure in keeping me informed. I didn't know his name. I didn't want to. He was a symbol, not of joy, but of the ultimate betrayal, the final nail in the coffin of my old life. The birth, I imagined, would have cemented their new family unit even further. My parents, doting grandparents. Mike, the proud father. Clara, the mother. A perfect picture, if you didn't know the ugly truth behind the canvas. I was at a crossroads, though it felt more like a desolate, featureless plain with no clear paths leading anywhere I wanted to go. The rage had mostly subsided, leaving behind a chronic, low-grade ache, a permanent weariness of the soul. The isolation was still profound, but it had become a familiar companion, a grim comfort in its predictability. What now? That was the question that echoed in the emptiness of my apartment, in the silence of my solitary life. Could I ever rebuild? Could I ever trust again? The very idea seemed ludicrous. The betrayal had been too deep, too personal, cutting across every significant relationship I'd ever had. Some days, the bitterness was overwhelming. I would fantasize about confronting them all again, not with rage this time, but with a cold, articulate recitation of their sins, forcing them to acknowledge the devastation they had wrought. But what would be the point? They had made their choices. They were living with them, seemingly content. My pain was my own, a burden they had no interest in sharing or alleviating. Other days, a strange sort of detachment would settle over me. I would look at my life as if from a great distance, a character in a tragic play. It was almost interesting, in a horrifying way. How does one survive such a comprehensive demolition of one's world? I thought about moving away, starting over completely, in a new city, a new country, where no one knew my name, my story, where I wouldn't risk running into them, or hearing news of their happy, stolen life. The idea had a certain appeal, the allure of a clean slate. But it also felt like running away, like letting them win, letting them drive me out. And part of me, a stubborn, wounded part, resisted that. Could I ever forgive them? The question felt academic, irrelevant. Forgiveness implies a possibility of reconciliation, of healing. And some wounds, I was beginning to realize, were too deep to ever truly heal. Some betrayals were too fundamental. Forgiveness felt like a betrayal of myself, of the legitimate pain and anger I felt. My work became a refuge, of sorts. The logic of numbers, the clean lines of spreadsheets, offered a stark contrast to the messy, incomprehensible chaos of my personal life. I threw myself into it, working long hours, finding a numb solace in deadlines and projects. It was a way to pass the time, to keep the darkness at bay, if only temporarily. But what kind of life was this? A life of work and solitude, haunted by ghosts and betrayals? Was this all that was left for me? Sometimes, late at night, staring at the ceiling, a flicker of something else would stir within me. Not hope exactly, That felt too ambitious, too naive. But perhaps a flicker of defiance. A refusal to be completely extinguished by what they had done. A recognition that, despite everything, I was still here. Still breathing. Still, somehow, existing. The path ahead was shrouded in fog. There were no easy answers, no clear directions. The crossroads I stood at was not a choice between two appealing options, but a choice between different shades of desolation, different ways of navigating the wreckage. Could I find a new purpose? A new meaning? Could I ever build new relationships, knowing how fragile and treacherous human connections could be? The thought was terrifying. The risk of being hurt again, of trusting and being betrayed again, felt almost unbearable. But the alternative, a lifetime of bitter solitude, defined only by what I had lost, was equally bleak. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I would ever feel whole again, if the gaping wounds in my soul would ever scar over. The pain was a constant companion, a shadow that followed me everywhere. But as I stood at this desolate crossroads, looking out at the uncertain, fog-shrouded path ahead, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift occurred within me. Not a resolution, not a plan, just a quiet acknowledgement. They had taken so much from me. My wife, my brother, my parents, my dreams of a family, my trust in the world. But they hadn't taken everything. They hadn't taken my life. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was enough to start with. A single, flickering ember in the overwhelming darkness. The path ahead was unknown, terrifying. But for the first time in a long, long time, I felt a faint, almost forgotten stirring. The will to take a step. Just one. Into the fog. Into the uncertain future. Alone, yes. But perhaps not entirely broken.